Murder increased by 0.6%, while attempted murder is up by 6.5%. Residential burglaries and hijackings are all up, with a dramatic spike in drug-related crimes. Police say crime would have been significantly lower if it weren't for violent public protests. There were over 12,000 protests. Contact crime, sexual offences, bank robberies, ATM bombings and cash in transit have decreased. Police attribute successes to strategic partnerships with the stakeholders between the police and the banking sector. The police plan to sign a memorandum of understanding with Stats SA to emphasise the credibility of their crime stats. Now, to help us unpack the statistics, we are joined in studio by advocate Simi Pillay Van Graan, who is the CEO of Business Against Crime, including Dr. Chandre Gould, who is an analyst from the Institute for Security Studies. Welcome to AM News, ladies.
Thank you.
I'll start off with Dr. Gould. You are an analyst for the Institute of Security Studies. We saw the statistics yesterday. The police minister, Natim Tetwa, including Ria Pierre, who's the national commissioner, laid out the statistics for us in terms of crime in South Africa. Can you just analyze them briefly for us and just tell us what we are working with in the year 2013 in terms of crime?
Well, I think the first thing to note is that we're dealing with old information. The statistics are already at least 6 months out of date, if not 18 months out of date. So it's not telling us what we know right now is happening. And that's one of the things that we're concerned about. I think for all South Africans, the concern will be, and in fact investors as well, the concern is going to be that we've seen increases in all the violent crimes that make us most fearful. And this is concerning. I think the crime statistics were also offered to us in a way that left some confusion. Some were given as ratios, some were given as raw numbers. Some crimes that might not have or should not have been given as ratios, like, for example, business robberies were. And we've seen even an increase in business robberies and house robberies. So I think these are the things that concern us, and particularly because murder has changed its downward trend for the first time in 6 years.
And speaking of increase in crime in South Africa, I mean, we've seen an increase in serious crimes. In your view, what does that mean?
Well, I think that over the world, one is going to see increases and decreases in crime at different times. The United States has also seen recently a spike in violent crime. And of course, there's going to be a lot of speculation about what one needs to do with it, But in South Africa, I think the most important thing for us to acknowledge right now is that our society is extremely violent, and we need a plan to deal with it.
And Simi, just talking about business and putting business into the picture, how affected are small businesses and businesses by crime, would you say?
I think they're very affected. Big businesses, it's a little bit more of a controlled environment, purely because they have the infrastructure, they have the finances to invest in security measures. The problem we have are actually your small businesses. These are the people that have small operating budgets purely because they are small business. Security is not a big priority because they're trying to make ends meet. And I think they are most affected. And you'll find that with small businesses, there's quite a few cropping up on a daily basis. So it puts more of them out there to be exposed to crime. So it is a very, very serious matter for us at this point in time, especially around the way they manage their cash or the cash management systems that they don't have in place. You'll find a lot of them actually take huge amounts of monies from their businesses, which is then transported by hand to the bank. So it's not very difficult to actually follow the patterns in terms of their movement with cash. So we're in the process as Business Against Crime to try and help them to develop a secure cash management model that will assist, and then also to look at cost-effective security measures, which can assist them to get in touch with the police.
When you talk of small businesses, you also you remind of, the current reports that we've seen with Somali spaza shops in townships. That's whereby, correct. Residents have been looting and burning their shops down, which just shows how crime is affecting these small businesses. But getting on to the bigger businesses, I mean, how affected is the economy by crime in SA?
I think crime has impacted the economy over the last, many years, and I think it's not getting better. The concern around crime stats and the stats that were released yesterday is stats tend to go out viral immediately, and it's the international perception of the country. You'll find that a lot of businesses are quite concerned about investing in South Africa not only around the crime situation, but it's one of the key issues. And you'll find that most of the crimes that have gone up, as Dr. Gould quite rightly put it, are crimes that make us fearful. And as South Africans, if we believe that we are living in fear, you can only understand what the perception is outside the country. So it does impact on business. It does impact on productivity. You'll find that a lot of businesses who do decide to move out of the country because out of their fear for crime actually leave behind a lot of unemployed people, which then contributes to the vicious cycle because you have unemployed people, from a social side. Poverty is one of the key factors. So it's quite a vicious circle, and yes, it does impact the economy quite
absolutely.
terribly.
I mean, Dr. Gould, when we look at the studies that you conduct as the Institute for Security Studies, and we look at sort of the influences for crime, is it fair to blame liquor, alcohol abuse, to blame substance abuse as one of the causes for crime in South Africa?
I think it's wrong to see it as a cause. I think it's right to see it as an aggravating factor. So if you're in a society where violence is normal and violence is accepted as a way of responding to a bump against your body or somebody who insults you, then you're going to find that alcohol or substance abuse will aggravate that. So certainly there is a need to address high levels of alcohol consumption. But I think if we're talking, look, for example, at the study that the police did about attacks on businesses and spaza shops last year, which showed that the victims of these kind of attacks, spaza shops in the township, were being attacked on the whole, by children of the age of 16. So your perpetrators were young. So what we need to be doing now is looking really closely at some of those factors that are driving violent crime. And one of those is the acceptance of violence as a way to solve problems.
And speaking of solving problems, I mean, looking at the stats that we were presented with yesterday, what do you think government can do to reduce crime that hasn't been done or even been considered as a solution before?
I think in 1996, the National Crime Prevention Strategy was developed. And it looked both at addressing the social causes of crime and addressing policing and the needs of the criminal justice system. But it was never implemented fully and never given a great deal of substance. Right now, we need a very clear, focused plan to target communities where violence is high and offer services that are going to address the factors that result in violence. So we need a crime prevention strategy that isn't focused on policing alone.
All right. And you're speaking of, a crime prevention strategy, and it brings me to you, Advocate Simi, that is there a relationship between businesses and the justice system so they can work together in coming up with solutions to perhaps prevent crime or come up with strategies to act after crime has taken place, affecting businesses?
There's definitely a relationship, and BAXA is one of the key catalysts that facilitates that relationship. However, what we need to emphasize is, yes, there's a lot being done on the criminal justice system at the moment, where business is supporting it and where BAXA is leveraging support from business. We're bringing in skills that are required by government. The problem, however, is that the plan has got to be an integrated plan. And when I say integrated, I don't necessarily mean between business and government alone. If you take government itself, you need to start bringing in other government departments that are not typically known as law enforcement government departments. You need to bring in departments like the Department of Trade and Industry. They hold certain security mandates which override the police. In other words, they've got certain mandates which they can control, like your export-import processes, which is basically an open door for organized crime in the country. And if you look at the crime stats, the stats that went up are basically all linked to some type of organized crime. So we need to bring in these departments. Department of Education plays a critical role. A lot of the problems that we have is around behavior. And I think it needs to take the leadership role when it comes to instance to learners, teachers, parents, to send the message out that leadership actually begins in the home. Leadership begins in school. And I think that is going to be the determining factor of what the crime trends are going to be in the future. So we believe in that integrated approach.
And we spoke of the small businesses, and we made an example of, the spaza shops that are usually occupied by Somalians in townships. I mean, how do we get them empowered in terms of avoiding situations whereby these spaza shops, are I don't know, they target areas for looting and burning. How do we empower them with security and knowledge on how to react in situations like these?
I think the first thing is that there must be that understanding that there is a place for everybody. And as BAC, we're embarking on a project now where we want to give them leadership and management training. Rather use the energy to focus on your own business, and we will empower you with what you need, especially in terms of compliance, knowledge on how to run a business. And I think that will create more security when you're working alongside a Somalian. I think it's at this point in time, it's a lack of security. It's insecurity because you don't know what you're actually doing. It's real competition out there, but it's about us coming in and say, let's help them to be more structured.
Absolutely. And Dr. Gould, I mean, just briefly, as we close off, we have seen the statistics and we've seen the report and the detailed crimes and with the percentages involved. I mean, are there any other crimes that we need to be aware of that might not have necessarily been included in the report?
You know, I think we weren't given very clear statistics for rape this year, and the common assault and the serious assault statistics weren't disaggregated to give us a picture of how much of those assault figures are caused by domestic violence. And these are critical pieces of information that we need in order to be able to address the problem. So we would like to see much more detail in the reporting of the crime statistics.
All right, thank you so much. We just had CEO of Business Against Crime, Advocate Simi Pillay Van Graan, and Dr. Chandre Gould, who is an analyst from the Institute for Security Studies. Thank you so much for coming to News.
Thank you.